Hello Zenith women and welcome to the channel. The most dangerous opponent is the one you never see coming. Most people wouldn't recognize a Sigma female if she was sitting right next to them, and that's exactly how she likes it. While the world gets distracted by the loudest voices in the room, she operates in the shadows, unnoticed, but undeniably powerful. She's not interested in proving herself, which is precisely why people underestimate her and ultimately regret it. Here's a fact. Studies show that people naturally pay more attention to those who demand it, often overlooking the quiet outliers. That means the Sigma female isn't just ignored, she's practically invisible. And that's where the real danger lies, because while others chase validation, she's out here making silent moves that leave everyone else wondering, wait, how did she do that? So why do people sleep on the Sigma female? Simple. She doesn't beg for attention. She earns respect without asking for it, and by the time people realize what they've missed, she's already 10 steps ahead, sipping her coffee and watching the show. Number 1, she's the one you regret underestimating. People underestimate the Sigma female because she doesn't announce herself. She doesn't walk into a room seeking validation or trying to prove her worth. She doesn't beg for attention, and she certainly doesn't waste time explaining herself, and that's exactly why people misjudge her. They assume that because she isn't loud, she isn't powerful. Because she isn't constantly flaunting her skills, she doesn't have any. Because she isn't playing the same exhausting social games as everyone else, she's not a player at all. But they're wrong. And by the time they realize it, the game is already over. She isn't the type to gloat. She won't rub her success in your face or remind you of all the times you doubted her. She doesn't need to. The regret hits all on its own. That ex who thought she was too independent and assumed he could do better, he's still thinking about her while she's out thriving, completely unbothered. That boss who overlooked her for a promotion because she wasn't the loudest in the office, now they're watching her build something of her own, wondering why they didn't see her potential. That so-called friend who mistook her silence for weakness. They're realizing too late that she was the real one all along. The Sigma female never seeks revenge. She doesn't need to. Her success, her growth, her ability to move forward without looking back, that's enough. She won't argue, she won't fight for your approval, and she definitely won't waste energy proving what should have been obvious. People always see her value too late, always recognize what they had only after she's gone. And when that moment comes, there's nothing they can do about it. What makes it worse is that she's not even bitter. She doesn't dwell on the past or hold on to resentment. She simply moves on, and that's the part that stings the most. Because the truth is, the Sigma female never needed validation in the first place. She was already enough. The real loss was never hers. It was theirs. Number 2, she's not easily influenced, so people assume she's uninformed. The Sigma female doesn't blindly follow trends, groupthink, or popular narratives. She questions everything, analyzes from multiple angles, and makes decisions based on logic, not peer pressure. But because she doesn't immediately nod along or jump on every bandwagon, people assume she's uninformed, out of touch, or just not getting it. They couldn't be more wrong. What most fail to realize is that she's not absent, she's observant. While others react impulsively, she takes a step back and dissects situations with precision. She doesn't just absorb information, she filters it, removing the noise, bias, and manipulation that most people don't even notice. She's the one quietly watching as people parrot opinions they haven't fully thought through. And instead of correcting them, she lets them talk. She knows that most people aren't looking for the truth. They're looking for agreement. Because she doesn't rush to conform, others assume she must be behind. They mistake her silence for a lack of awareness, not realizing that she often knows more than they do. She just doesn't feel the need to prove it. The irony is, the very people who dismiss her as uninformed are often the ones who haven't questioned their own beliefs. They repeat what they've heard, never stopping to ask whether it actually makes sense. The Sigma female, on the other hand, refuses to be spoon-fed perspectives. She forms her own, and that level of independence makes people uncomfortable. Her resistance to influence isn't arrogance, it's discipline. She doesn't let social pressure dictate her reality. If an idea is flawed, she won't adopt it just to fit in. If a rule is irrational, she won't follow it just to avoid standing out. And if a person is full of empty words, she won't pretend they're making sense just to be polite. That's why she's so often misunderstood. People assume that because she's not loudly agreeing, She must not understand. But in truth, she understands more than most. She just refuses to be another echo in a room full of noise. Number 3, she's the exception to every rule, and people hate that. Society thrives on labels. It likes to sort people into neat little categories: introvert or extrovert, leader or follower, rule breaker or rule abider. People find comfort in predictability because it makes others easier to understand and ultimately easier to control. But the Sigma female doesn't fit into any of these predefined boxes, and that makes her a problem for those who rely on quick assumptions and easy classifications. She isn't loud enough to be an alpha, but she's too strong to be a beta. She's independent but not rebellious for the sake of it. She's ambitious but not power-hungry. She's social when she chooses to be, but vanishes just as easily. Every time someone tries to pin her down, she slips through the cracks of their expectations. And that frustrates people to no end. Most people are used to understanding others based on predictable patterns. They know how to deal with the overachiever who needs validation, the rule breaker who craves attention, or the passive observer who stays in the background. But the Sigma female disrupts those patterns. She doesn't play by society's rules, not because she's trying to rebel, but because they simply don't apply to her. She follows logic, intuition, and self-defined principles, making her impossible to manipulate through conventional tactics. This inability to be categorized makes her a threat to people who rely on social structures for power, bosses who expect blind obedience, partners who rely on emotional control, or friend groups that demand conformity all struggle with her presence. She doesn't fall for guilt trips, peer pressure, or social hierarchies. She operates on her own frequency, and that drives people crazy because they can't figure out where she fits, or how to make her play by their rules. The harsh truth is, most people don't actually hate the Sigma female. They hate that they can't define her, because if they can't define her, they can't predict her. And if they can't predict her, they can't control her. That level of autonomy is rare, and it makes people deeply uncomfortable. But for the Sigma female, it's just another day of living on her own terms. Number 4, she's ruthless with her energy, and people take it personally. The Sigma female treats her energy like a limited resource, because it is. She knows that every conversation, every interaction, and every relationship either fuels her or drains her. And if it's the latter, she cuts it off without hesitation, not out of malice, not because she's cold-hearted, but because she refuses to waste herself on people who offer nothing but negativity, chaos, or empty noise. This level of self-respect unsettles people. Society conditions most to tolerate draining relationships out of politeness, guilt, or obligation. But the Sigma female doesn't play by those rules. She won't entertain fake friendships just to avoid hurting feelings. She won't keep someone around just because they've been friends for years. And she definitely won't engage in pointless drama just to stay relevant in social circles. If you bring nothing but emotional baggage, manipulation, or constant complaints, she'll disappear so fast you'll think she was never there to begin with. And this is where people take it personally. They mistake her boundaries for arrogance, her self-preservation for selfishness. The reality, it's neither. She simply refuses to set herself on fire to keep others warm. She has no interest in explaining why she walked away, no desire to argue about why she stopped returning texts, and absolutely no patience for people who demand unlimited access to her energy without offering anything in return. What people don't understand is that she applies this rule to everyone: friends, family, colleagues, even romantic partners. No one gets special treatment. If someone is toxic, manipulative, or consistently draining, they're cut off, no matter who they are. And the best part? She doesn't make a big scene about it. No dramatic goodbyes, no endless back and forths, just silence. One day you're in her life, the next you're not. And when people finally realize what they lost, it's already too late. At the end of the day, she knows one thing for sure: energy is everything. And she'd rather spend it on growth, purpose, and genuine connections than waste another second on those who don't deserve it. Number 5, she can't be bought, so most don't know how to handle her. The Sigma female doesn't go around trying to prove herself, dominate conversations, or put people in their place. She doesn't have to. Just by existing as her fully independent, self-sufficient self, she unknowingly exposes the insecurities of those around her. And that's where the trouble starts. She's the kind of woman who doesn't need validation, which makes people who thrive on external approval deeply uncomfortable. She doesn't chase status, yet she commands more respect than those who do. She's not looking for attention, but somehow all eyes are on her anyway. She moves through life on her own terms, answering to no one, and that disrupts the social balance in a way that some people just can't handle. Insecure people rely on power dynamics to feel important. They're used to those who play along, who submit, seek approval, or at least acknowledge their supposed superiority. But the Sigma female does none of that. She doesn't argue to prove a point, doesn't compete for attention, and doesn't engage in petty mind games. Instead, she simply is, completely unbothered, completely in control, and that's what rattles people the most. The silent confidence of a Sigma female is like a mirror. It forces people to see themselves without the filters of status, reputation, or social validation. A weak man standing next to her suddenly feels smaller, not because she belittles him, but because her presence reminds him of his own inadequacies. A fake friend realizes they have nothing to offer her, and instead of improving themselves, they resent her for making them feel replaceable. An insecure boss sees her self-sufficiency and instinctively feels threatened, fearing that she won't be easy to manipulate. She's not trying to challenge anyone. She's not actively exposing weaknesses or calling people out, but her very nature forces those around her to confront their own insecurities. And for those who rely on external power to feel important, that's an unbearable feeling. That's why they either try to tear her down or stay the hell out of her way. Number 6, she's a walking lie detector, and that terrifies people. The Sigma female doesn't just listen to words, she reads between the lines. She catches the micro-expressions, the subtle hesitations, the inconsistencies that most people overlook. She doesn't need someone to admit they're lying, she already knows, and that makes people nervous. Most people go through life wearing masks, pretending to be more confident, more successful, more righteous than they actually are. They curate their personalities to fit the situation, molding themselves into whatever will gain approval. But none of that works on the Sigma female. She has an instinct for deception, an almost unsettling ability to see people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be. This isn't just about catching liars in the act, it's about seeing the truth even when it's unspoken. She senses when someone is being fake, when their words don't match their energy, when they're hiding their true motives. And what makes it worse? She rarely calls it out directly. She doesn't need to. Her silence alone is enough to make people squirm. Manipulators hate her because they can't control her. Fake friends resent her because she doesn't fall for their forced kindness. Dishonest partners fear her because they know she sees what they're trying to hide, and because she doesn't react the way they expect, doesn't get fooled, doesn't play along. They feel exposed in a way they can't explain. The scariest part? She doesn't even have to try. It's not some skill she studied or a game she plays, it's just who she is. A woman who sees reality for what it is, not for what people want it to be. And for those who live behind carefully constructed illusions, that's terrifying. Because when a Sigma female looks at them, they know deep down she sees them, the real them, and no lie, no charm, no social trick can change that. Number 7, she's invisible until it's too late. The Sigma female doesn't announce herself. She doesn't walk into a room demanding attention, and she certainly doesn't waste time proving her worth to people who aren't paying attention. While others compete for the spotlight, she stays in the background, watching, learning, and making moves that no one sees coming, and that's exactly why people underestimate her. She isn't the loudest voice in the room, so people assume she has nothing to say. She doesn't flaunt her skills, so they assume she doesn't have any. She doesn't seek validation, so they assume she must not be worth validating. But by the time they realize their mistake, she's already miles ahead, successful, untouchable, and completely uninterested in their delayed recognition. The truth is, the Sigma female plays a different game. While attention seekers are busy trying to impress, she's mastering her craft in silence. While others are caught up in competition, she's already bypassed the need for approval altogether. She doesn't waste time convincing people of her potential. She simply becomes what they never saw coming. And when she finally does make a move, it's precise, effortless, and impossible to ignore. That's why she's such a threat to those who rely on social power. They don't see her as competition until they do. They don't take her seriously until they have to. She doesn't fit the typical mold of a dominant personality, so they don't know how to measure her. And by the time they realize she was never behind them, but ahead all along, it's already too late. The best part? She doesn't even care. She doesn't waste energy proving her worth to those who slept on her. She doesn't go back to rub her success in their faces. She simply moves forward, leaving them to wonder how they missed something so undeniable. But that's the Sigma female's greatest power. By the time people notice her, she's already out of reach. Number 8, she's a shadow player, not a show-off. The Sigma female doesn't care about looking successful. She cares about being successful. While others flood social media with highlight reels and carefully curated personas, she's behind the scenes, putting in the real work. She's not interested in chasing clout, proving herself to strangers, or engaging in status games that amount to nothing. Instead, she operates in silence, letting her results speak for themselves. This is why people constantly underestimate her. In a world where everyone is obsessed with appearing important, she refuses to play along. She doesn't post every move she makes, doesn't document every win, and definitely doesn't waste time seeking applause for things that don't matter. The loud ones mistake this for a lack of ambition. They assume that because she isn't flexing, she must not have anything to show. But what they don't realize is that while they're busy performing, she's accumulating real power. Power they won't see until it's too late. She moves like a strategist, not a showman. While others seek validation through likes, followers, and meaningless titles, she's quietly building something solid. Skills, wealth, knowledge, things that can't be taken away. And by the time the world catches up, she's already untouchable. The best part? She doesn't need recognition to stay motivated. Unlike those who rely on public approval to feel accomplished, she's driven by something much deeper, her own standards. She doesn't need an audience clapping for her progress because she isn't performing for them in the first place. And that's what truly separates her from the rest. While others waste time maintaining illusions, she's building a reality that doesn't require validation. And in the long run, that's what makes her dangerous. Because by the time the show-offs realize they were playing the wrong game, the Sigma female has already won. Number 9, she's extremely loyal but completely dispensable. The Sigma female doesn't waste her loyalty on just anyone. She's not the type to blindly attach herself to people out of loneliness, obligation, or habit. If she's in your life, it's because she chooses to be. And when she chooses, she's all in, loyal, supportive, and unshakable. But the moment she realizes she's being taken for granted, disrespected, or betrayed, she's gone. No warnings, no drawn-out arguments, just silence. What makes this so shocking to people is that they assume she needs them. They mistake her loyalty for dependency, believing that because she's so present and invested, she can't possibly walk away. That's where they get it wrong. She's loyal because she wants to be, not because she has to be. And when that desire fades, when she sees that her energy is being wasted, she cuts ties without hesitation. People don't see it coming. They assume she'll always be there, always giving, always understanding. But the moment they cross the line, they realize just how replaceable they actually are. And the worst part? There's no dramatic exit, no emotional breakdown, no messy confrontation, just a clean, effortless detachment that leaves them stunned. The Sigma female doesn't do second chances for people who show her they don't value her. She doesn't beg for respect, doesn't fight to prove her worth, and doesn't waste time explaining why she's leaving. She just disappears, and when she does, there's no coming back. And that's the lesson most people learn too late. Her presence was a privilege, not a guarantee, and once she's gone, she's gone. Number 10. She challenges the ego without trying. The Sigma female doesn't go around trying to prove herself, outshine others, or dominate conversations. She doesn't have to. Her presence alone is enough to disrupt the fragile egos of those who rely on external validation to feel important. She moves through life with quiet confidence, unbothered, self-sufficient, and completely uninterested in social power plays. She doesn't seek approval, doesn't beg for attention, and doesn't engage in pointless competition. And yet just by existing, she unintentionally makes insecure people feel exposed. Why? Because she doesn't need what they need. She doesn't chase status symbols, social validation, or empty displays of dominance. She isn't impressed by loud voices, inflated egos, or people who feel the need to assert their superiority. Those who depend on these things to feel powerful find themselves rattled in her presence, because she doesn't feed into their game. She simply watches, unmoved, unimpressed, and completely unaffected. For someone who builds their self-worth around being seen and admired, this is unbearable. They expect people to either compete with them or submit to them. But the Sigma female does neither. She just is, completely whole, completely indifferent. And that drives weak-minded people insane. She's the woman who makes the arrogant second-guess themselves, the insecure feel exposed, and the fake feel inadequate without saying a word. Not because she's trying to tear anyone down, but because her very existence reminds people of the gaps in their own confidence. And that's what makes her a problem for those who rely on ego-driven power. She doesn't attack them. She doesn't even acknowledge them. But her presence alone forces them to confront a truth they'd rather ignore. Real power doesn't need an audience. The Sigma female is the one you never saw coming, the one who wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but was always 10 steps ahead. While others chased attention, she built herself in silence. While they played social games, she mastered the art of moving without limits. She never needed validation, permission, or recognition to thrive, and that's exactly why people underestimated her. But by the time they realized their mistake, she was already gone, unbothered, unstoppable, and completely out of reach. The world may sleep on the Sigma female, but it's always at its own loss, because she isn't here to impress, she's here to evolve. And those who fail to recognize her power, they'll only understand it when they're left wondering how they missed something so undeniable. If this video opened your eyes to the power of the Sigma female, don't just watch, engage. Hit that like button if you're done with society's labels. Drop a comment if you relate to any of these traits, and subscribe for more brutally honest insights. Stay ahead of the game, because the Sigma female always does.